One ocean is fully down. Unfortunately, in exchange for that, we have the Shining Stars, otherwise pretty much down, which Hermit and Sister are currently not in the condition to really participate in the events of the arc. I imagine actually if Witch, if she gets free, she might be able to still do stuff, but clearly Hermit and Sister are very damaged. It was stated it's not anything like severe. It's nothing that's too crazy that can be repaired. But I would imagine for at the time being, they're not going to be able to really provide aid into what's going on, in the events right now in the story. But I mean that's fair enough of a trade-off because like they still have some of the oceans. Unfortunately for the oceans, I don't imagine that they're going to all be like big fights. Given like the Homura fight, we saw Homura overtake Milani with a fair amount of difficulty. I mean, she still went overdrive. She still had to put everything into her fight, but it wasn't like one of those. Wasn't one of those fights where you're wondering if she like is gonna have to struggle to overtake it. Like she beat him by just pulling out what she had to. There wasn't anything like I have to become stronger, like overcome my limits in the fight or kind of have some big revelation get stronger. And it wasn't one of those ones that was just like, oh yeah, it was kind of like Shiki versus Orc, but with a little bit higher difficulty. There was clearly not a lot going on for Milani's side of things the second that Homura went into overdrive. And again, Homura is one of the more big fighters for the Eden Zero side. I'd say the only other people that I would directly place above her are Jin and Shiki. So when it comes to those two, that's one thing. But the other characters I would assume still have somewhat difficult fights ahead of them for whoever they're going to go up against. I was expecting actually this was going to be set more on either Rebecca or Wise. My guess on the fight was going to be Wise for this dude, Nase. I don't know how his name is exactly pronounced, but I'm having like that weird premonition that this is actually going to be a fight with Moscow. I don't know why, but I feel like with both Rebecca and Wise under the effects of this dude's ether gear, that it's going to be one of those ones where it's like, it's essentially if they were trapped in illusion or they were just KO, and it's like they're going to be like this for the current setting of the fight. And we could get the scene revealing whatever pressing the button on Moscow's stomach does. And it's completely unaware if it's going to do anything like actually major, like if it activates a battle mode. I know that's a theory that people have theorized. You can look at like gag characters because it's very clear he's a gag character. Like Moscow is a gag character, but he could have a serious side to him. Say like when the button is pressed, it's like he switches into like a serious character kind of like setup. It's kind of like in Rave Master you had the Jigglebutt gang. They were full gag character. They weren't that serious. Whereas like Fairy Tail, he had Ichiya. I'd say his Ichiya was more comedic gag character than he was a serious character, but he didn't have times where it was like his character actually was in a serious situation. We know that he actually was like a capable fighter. It's just like you have to get him seriously to fight, and that was a huge issue in of itself. But another character like I can think of is, if anyone's read Mar, is Alan. I can't remember the dog's name off the top of my head, but it was essentially he had his body trapped and he had to share it with this dog, and it was like the dog was just literally like this talking dog character, but the guy that he would occasionally switch places with was like one of the strongest guys in the series. It was actually kind of like an Escanor setup. You could have something like that. Obviously Escanor is not a gag character. Either side of Escanor was never placed to be like that, but you know what I mean, where it could have just that very flipped coin presence in the series, if we could get something like that. If whatever the serious Moscow is actually like, hey, when this character is out, it's not like a joke. This is like, this character is gonna have like whatever input on events in the story that goes on, and whatever next really is going to kind of like take place. It's like a weird, it's a really weird character to put in there. I think Ichiyo is a good example of how you could do it without it kind of like seeming too silly, because there were times obviously like the first arc we got him, he was silly, But when we got to like the later portions of it, like when they're trying to take down Nirvana and stuff, he had like a more serious side to him and stuff. We got to see that in display. So whether that's going to happen with Moscow, I don't know. Rebecca or Wise could snap out of this manipulation that's going on with them because they're having their ether messed with. We have a statement from like Lyra that Nase, however her name is pronounced, and Lyra have the ability to mess with people's ether. So there's this like an internal body hacks that they're like kind of screwing with their innards, like screwing with the power that makes up their bodies. So it's going to do some form of weird internal tomfoolery, some shenanigans on them. The thing about that though that makes me kind of like wonder how their fights are going to go is that those kind of characters, like usually when your power is more tricky, you're more of like I always call them more like classic casters. Your power is a range kind of unfair ability, or you're designed to again fight people at a distance. And I guess in this case it's still sort of at a distance, but more of like a mental manipulation distance. The characters aren't fighting at their actual full on capabilities. They're being messed with internally. So it's like if they can overcome that, like if they can overcome this dude Nase's power that he's using on them, I would imagine that they could defeat him. And we had Milani, she had a degree of fighting, like when she was using some of like her clones and using like the glass shards and stuff for her attacks. That I was like, okay, yeah, I can see her. I could see her being a fighter in that regard, but not the same as like, say like Jin. Jin is probably one of the closer fighters in the series. Shiki too, where it's like they're melee combatants. They're characters that are going to be fighting with their hands and they're going to be taking a lot of hits. Whereas there are going to be characters who are, again, not setting to get hit. They are ranged characters. They aren't. Their whole power setup is not designed for them to really take a beating. So a character like that getting caught out could result in them getting defeated fairly quickly. It really just depends on how the characters respond to like their abilities and stuff. But in the chapter itself, I think one of the best parts and the way I use this panel was Shiki snapping when they were like saying like you can't just go in, rush the base and challenge Shura. We think it's a trap what he's doing. He didn't turn off any of our ways to track Witch, so he's clearly baiting you to come over there. And Shiki's he's not seeing it as like I don't have time to formulate, like I don't have time to like try and like think this over in like small steps, because obviously Shura does not have any, he has zero view on like the robots and androids as being living people. They're just parts to him. It's just machines. So he, like in Shiki's mind, he can destroy Witch at any point, and Shiki obviously doesn't want that. The thing I do like about it is like when you look, I always compare like certain aspects of like specifically character ones. I think the character ones are to a degree. I don't like to bring them up too much just because like Eden Zero's its own thing. Shiki's his own guy. But it's easy to compare and understand aspects about him when you kind of look at him like comparing to like Haru and Natsu. But like Haru was pretty much the leader of his group, but he was never like the same kind that like Shiki is, or Shiki's the outright captain of the Eden Zero. And Natsu is not the leader of his group. He's like the champion of the guild. He's like, like if you think of like an old medieval kind of movie, if they had like a trial by combat thing, Natsu's their champion. He's the guy that they would put up there to really represent. Whereas like Shiki is outright the captain of the Eden Zero crew. He's a captain of the ship. He's in charge. And seeing like right here where he's like just trying to like, he clearly is not controlling his emotions, and he's snapping, but he's also trying to lay down his position of authority on Jin. And yet Couchbo kind of like put him in check a little bit, and like is there any way that you talk to your friends? Because Shiki, he is the captain, but he obviously sees everybody on the crew as like his friend. So him clearly not even like looking at somebody who's trying to convey like the reality of it, trying to help him, trying to make sure he doesn't go and mess something up, is instead trying to like flex a position of authority onto him, flex his rank, to pretty much try and silence him. And I think that was like just a good moment for Shiki, because it kind of like put Shiki in a spot where he was trying to be in charge. He was trying to demonstrate that he was in charge, but it was not a good time for it. A good time for it was like when Ziggy, when they had the whole stuff going on, when Ziggy coming back around the little after chapter 100, and Shiki wasn't too rattled. Like he was clearly rattled by it, but it wasn't enough that he wasn't in his right mind and he was able to take command of what was going on and assure everybody of what they were doing. That was like a good moment for it, whereas like this is clearly like he's in a bad spot. Like Shura is clearly trying to push him, he's trying to push his buttons, and he's trying to rile Shiki up. So that fight is very interesting, and how Mishima's playing it between the two characters. And I like it so far. I like what he's doing with Shura. Shura's interesting. I like how he's playing on that aspect of Shiki's whole wanting to be friends thing, but now it's switched into a guy who Shiki doesn't want to be friends, that wants to be friends with him. I do like that. I thought that was pretty good. And then as well as like him just talking to Witch. Luckily you're able to get away with more violence on machines considering they're robots. But he's just like having them throw knives at Witch using his gravity manipulation, his ability to just kind of pretty much telekinesis the way he's using it, but just kind of gravity throw a bunch of knives at her and like cutting into her arm or leg. She looks relatively fine. She's like, but she is locked up with like a ether canceling, kind of like shackling, so she can't use any of her abilities. You have what was her name, Juna, who's there, pretty much just analyzing her, giving some information to Shura about like, oh yeah, this is who she is. This is what information we have on her, and this is exactly, her title. I'm surprised she didn't have information on what her power was, like what her ether ability was, because she did mention that, like her ether code and like stuff about like Ziggy and stuff, but beyond that, it was like just reading like a short summary. I am surprised that she didn't have any information on her power, on like what exactly it was about her ether ability, because I don't know, I feel like that's just a really like vital thing you would go for when talking about some of these characters, just because at that point you're giving away what should be one of the most vital things about them. What can this person do in a world where these guys all got like weird and strange powers? Just like a thing. Maybe they don't have that. Maybe that's one of the things they don't generally get. Like maybe characters keep like powers way more secretive. I guess that would still fit, because it is one of the more intimate things you'd have to know. Like you could know just like the base summary, like what I know about it from like word of mouth and stuff. But the power would be when you have to either get from somebody who's witnessed it, or somebody who just outright knows it. So that wasn't a big deal, but it was something that I was wondering about. Like, does she have it? She just didn't say it. Again, not a big deal. But what I would like to, it's one of those ones I've always looked forward to, just because it's essentially analysis. You're just giving analysis of this character. You're giving us like a little TLDR of what you know and what you're conveying to the people around him, in this case Shura. And then we kind of move near the end of the chapter, where we have the dude Nase, whatever his name is, use his power to like mess with Rebecca and Wise. Wise is like afraid of everything he sees now, and everything that Rebecca sees is making her sad. And it's like you have Pino, the Happy Bot, and you have Moscow there. Pino like is a valuable asset usually wherever she goes, because she can EMP cancel stuff out, which might be what she does in the following chapter. But I kind of want it to be Moscow. I really want to know what that button does, and I think it'd be really cool if it's like he has like a role switch. He goes from gag character to like serious character, and he's like a badass or something. Almost like they're pretty much two different characters. But we'll have to see. I mean, I think the next one is like chapter's called like Eye of Horus or something around that. So we're gonna probably get more of Nase, but could lead into Moscow. Who knows? But I feel like if it was focused on him, it would either have to be the following chapter that's named. It would have to be like maybe dropped last second in this in the next chapter. We'll have to wait. We won't find out any information on it for a few days. But either way, comment below, thumbs up the video, but from the like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. But I appreciate everybody's already subscribing. Thank you all for listening. Bye.